On county roads and bridges, thanks to our road department for clearing limbs, ice, and snow after storms. Our number one priority is protecting the citizens of our county. I am also responsible for various county administrative departments such as accounting, finance, human resources, and information technology. I'm very proud of the county staff and their departments who are part of the wealth of friendly and caring people that make our county truly noteworthy. Washington County is a place of choice. This is a destination place. This is where people want to grow their families, plant farms, build businesses, and start nonprofits. We have a small town filled with all the benefits of services of a large city. As your county judge, my goal is to help nurture a better county for all of our citizens, a county prepared for and conducive to positive growth. Welcome. Feel free to use our website and explore Washington County. Welcome to Washington County. As county judge, I am the chief executive.
So we're also going to now share some information about the state of Arkansas. Washington County is part of, it's one of the key counties in the state of Arkansas. So I'm also happy to share because it's going to tie into the conversation we're going to have as well. So I'm going to be sharing that right now.
What would life be like in Arkansas?
Arkansas has an opportunity, and it appears to me they certainly have the will to become an incubator for artificial intelligence in industrial America.
Our base up in Northwest Arkansas is one of our lowest attrition bases. People go there, they don't want to leave.
We have found that, number one, we can get high quality people here, and because our performance has been so strong, it makes us the natural choice for the business to keep that expansion coming here.
So the key thing about having these flagship organizations is you've got this huge concentration of best in the world talent in retail, supply chain, data analytics, decision science, consumer packaged goods. But that concentration of talent is an unfair advantage that Arkansas has over everywhere else in the country. There's nowhere else like it.
I met the senators and congressmen for our state. You can talk to anyone, and they will try to help you.
We know people on first name basis, honestly. And it's that kind of personal approach that makes it so easy to live and work in Arkansas.
A very important institution for us has been the Arkansas Economic Development Commission, helping us fit inside the ecosystem in the state.
One of the things that's really attractive to Arkansas is the quality of life and the cost of living.
There's a magic that happens if the culture is right and the people can work together the right way. That magic is here.
Okay, it's such an honor to have you here again. I just want to give people watching a background that you've been part of this journey from the very beginning. In fact, in 2018, when I had the first engagement in Arkansas, you helped welcome, you led the delegation of elected officials from the city, the mayor, Senator Bozeman's office, Congressman's office. You led them to welcome our own traveling delegates to the city. And for me, it's true testament of the mindset in Arkansas. I called Arkansas home. I'm still very much connected. And the reason it's so important that I wanted to bring this conversation to part of Trade with Africa Business Summit, because for me to be able to pull this off, I had to have a city that had a global mindset, that was open to the world, that was open to listening to trade conversation. So Bentonville, Northwest Arkansas, it's not new to global trade. It houses the world's largest company, the world's largest retailer. It's home to Walmart. So you're right there at what I like to call the epicenter of trade. And I also remember in 2018, as I was working with journalists on the continent, in inviting delegates from Africa to visit Arkansas, there was a journalist that pretty much just asked me, Toyin, why are you asking us to come to a city we've never heard of before? Exactly. But I had to make a case and say trade with Africa would always land in a city. If you do not have a welcoming city to a global mindset, you cannot make trade happen. So it's such an honor to have you on here. I want to say a big thank you for saying yes again. And that's the testament of the spirit. And even Scott Ford that we featured yesterday is a native of Arkansas and is connecting Africa to the global supply chain. I tell you, there's something you're drinking. Let me see.
Well,
Okay.
the hotel has Westrock coffee.
Fantastic. Yes. So Westrock coffee is right there. So welcome, sir. Let me just start with asking you, you've been a part of this conversation yet again. You experienced the first one in Arkansas. You're experiencing the first virtual edition. What's running through your mind right now?
Well, you didn't have to have me come and present or speak or anything. I would have just been happy just to hear this morning, hearing Mr. Dillon, obviously just hearing back from sister here. I'm just taken back by the living example. And I guess if you listen to each and every one of them, again, it's the mind shift, it's the disruption or interruption, if you will, which is what Arkansas has been pretty much doing. Again, it's called a flyover state, but it shouldn't be when you have Tyson and Walmart and I mean some of the largest Fortune 50 companies right there. But so much happens there, and it's quick and easy to look over that. And if we're talking about mindset and changing mindsets, I think what you saw this morning has done that. Most people will rather see the sermon than hear the sermon as I spend a lot of time in church. And I hear what you're saying on Sunday, but I want to see how you're living on Monday. And what we've experienced this morning, hearing from Abba Yije and Dylan, and these guys have actually walked the walk. And for Africa, if you want to say for the continent to have that mindset change, I think we just got to keep doing what we're doing. You have to keep doing what you're doing, which is live the example, walk the talk. We weren't always there. Dr. T, I know you said you grew up with your dad who was probably there, so you've had maybe a longer runway at this, but it takes people to get to where they are on their own time. We can't make somebody know what we know. They have to be open. They have to be experiencing. I use the word spices. You talk about Africa and the word and there's spices. You're not going to find better spices in the world beyond the continent of Africa. Well, it's about keeping it simple. It's about keeping it personal. It's about being in the integrity of what we're doing. It's about connecting, and the E is going to be, again, continue to empathize and share and see where we're coming from, and then it's continue to share your story. If we do that, mind shifts change. When you bring those young ladies from, I forget where she said she brought them from the Shea, who was doing the Shea Nuts, she brought them over on visas to the U.S. Brahma, Sister Wright, you brought them over. How powerful for them, because now their mind shift has changed. Even though they were doing work and that stuff was importing over to the US, for them to actually come and touch and see, their lives are forever changed. They go back and guess what they're going to be doing? They're going to be doing spices. They're going to be telling it. They're going to be sharing it. They're going to be empathizing and helping others. So the mindset changes as time happens, as we keep telling the story. Real brief, Dr. Toyin, I had spent time as a Deputy Secretary of State in Arkansas, and so our goal as Secretary of State, any business in the state of Arkansas has to come through the Secretary of State's office. I was responsible for that, but I also, and so any international businesses, any business wanting to come into the state of Arkansas, they had to come through the Secretary of State's office. But I also had opportunities to go to other parts of the world to encourage businesses overseas to come and do business in Arkansas. And I had done a couple of trips to Arkansas, and coming back from one of the trips, I got a call from Dr. Umasiri. You may know this young fella. And he was surprised. He said, hey, I've been reading about this guy, but is that the same guy who was found in the streets of Chicago and wrote some children's? Yes, I'm the same guy. And so we connected. Come to find out that he is from Nigeria. He does all his book sales goes back to a dollar goes back to orphans and libraries. And I want to be a part of that because of one of my heart for the continent of Africa. I did big work with Nigerian. We have a large Nigerian population, as you know, in the state of Arkansas. I did a big Nigerian Day in the state. I did a proclamation, cut ribbons. We had folks from Nigeria, the U.S. trade offices, the embassy. We had all these people in Arkansas, and I was the one leading all that. And then I get to Ghana, and the Ghanaians were like, no, you're not Nigerian. Your roots are not in Nigerian. They're from Ghana. And so there was some tug of war there, but I just love what is happening and want to continue to be a part of that. And so when you did your first summit with the World Trade Center, it became my honor just to continue to follow and support, because I want that to happen in Arkansas. Arkansas is an agricultural state, largely, and very much like a lot of parts of Africa. I go up into the Volta region, I'm thinking I'm in Arkansas. And so anyway, I say all that to say, there's a connection. I really think your forum has been phenomenal, your summit, and I didn't have to say anything just to hear Sister Wright and Mr. Dillon and hear some of the conversations yesterday. So anyway, with that, I'll say this last piece and we can go into our conversation. When we talk about trade in general, you normally will talk about the ladies who are working on their shade nuts over there on the borders, and they're doing local. They're doing things with each other. They're doing trade. And so that's the Washington County as I see. I'm a local doing business. I want people to do business in the county. So I got about 25 cities, et cetera. And we do business with one another, but I want to continue to have that. I want it to be this destination place. Then so beyond the local trade, you start getting bigger. People want what you want. They want the service that you're offering. They want the products that you're providing. And so now we may start going to this regional. Well, that's where the state comes in. What are the incentives that they have? What's the tax? Are you going to be able to have some manufacturing? What's your supply chain? And then we have our World Trade Center in Arkansas. You only got, I don't know, maybe 100 in the country, in the world, and we have one in the state of Arkansas, right down the street from me. And so Arkansas is really a champion of saying, if you are interested in bringing business into the state of Arkansas, or if you're an Arkansas business and want to do business around the world, we have that. We have built the structure, the infrastructure. We work with the USA Trade Office. Dr. Toyin talked about me being now chair of the National Association of Counties, their community work in economic, workforce economic development, which is really all saying, what are we doing with the 3,100 counties around the United States? How are we driving economic development? One of those things is opportunity zones, where there's an opportunity for businesses, entrepreneurs to go into some areas that have been blighted, who need some support and help, and go in with some incentives and drive business, whether it be in that area, around their surrounding areas, employ people, get them skill sets, training, et cetera. And so I'm excited about what we're going to be doing with the National Association of Counties to drive that home ownership, business opportunities, et cetera.
Fantastic.
So with that, go ahead, Dr. Toyin.
Okay, just for everybody, I know you call me Dr. Toyin. I just want to make sure everybody understands. So Judge Wood is a friend of the family. My husband is a professor, so it's testament to my husband's work. And Judge Wood is a published author, and my husband actually helped publish that book. So two of them.
Two. Exactly right.
So that's where that Dr. Toy, I get to, it's funny. So a lot of people call me Dr. Toy. I'm like, I didn't do PhD, but I'm enjoying this, man. So that's the honor of being married to a professor. So thank you so much for that honor. I appreciate it.
Absolutely.
Thank you. So one of the beautiful things that I think with your background and the work you're doing, can you share with everybody listening the power of how entrepreneurship and business can actually transform a city, a state, the nation, and the world? Because when we had our event in 2018, we actually took our traveling delegates to visit the Walmart Museum, which walked them through that said Walmart started here 50 years ago. Can you imagine what Arkansas was? So
right.
I think with your experience, there's no other person I can say that can tell us that story of the power of business, of entrepreneurship in transforming the world.
What a great example. So yes, over 50 plus years ago, Walmart started, but Walmart was not this global business that it was. When we talk about changing mindsets, it really is about dreaming big and then acting right where you are. We had I think when we were at Walmart together, we talked about thinking globally while we act locally. And I think Sam Walton, when he was creating Walmart, he had visions and dreams about what this Walmart thing could, but he could only do what he could do right then and there when he started his little company. And part of that, starting that little company, that little entrepreneurial fire drive that a Sister Wright has, and Dylan talked about, disrupting how retail is done. What are you talking about? Building out in the counties and the countryside. Most people were thinking, why would you go way out there? The people are all in the city. He figured out to run business in a city is going to cost more. If I can get land and build it out in the country and the county side, people will come out there. And guess what? They did. But it did transform little bitty town of Northwest Arkansas. And now it's a global phenomenon, global name. You can say that about J.B. Hunt. They were just transporting chickens, little trucking company, but it was so much growth in the chicken world, i.e. Tyson, same little thing, same process. And so you have this corridor right in the Northwest Arkansas corner where we live, where these were entrepreneurs banging and believing and hoping and dreaming big, but trying to scrap and figure out, can I make this work? They believed that they could. They connected with others, just like what we're doing over the past couple of days. And they has a little local trades going between each other. It got a little bigger. The states and the cities got involved with it, created some incentives, et cetera. And now they become global phenoms. And so to say that the Shaleens will never one day be in all the shelves in Walmart and all around the globe, I can see that. Because again, it look where it is now. It started on the shores of some parts of Africa and some of those countries there, and now it's made its way all the way over here to the U.S. And Sister Wright's got visions for it to be much more. Dr. Toyan's got some ideas to make sure it's going to be more than that. But anyway, I think it speaks volumes to entrepreneurism when you talk about 80% of women in Africa drive the informal economies. But if you start talking about the men who do some of the same thing, fishing on the shores, how do you convert that entrepreneurism? They already got the entrepreneur spirit. How do they go ahead and look at some of those, like you said, some of those government entities and bring the thoughts and ideas, not looking for the government to run it, but for them to drive the policies and the directions. Private-public partnerships, Mr. Dillon talked about that earlier, will transform what happens next. It's not the government driving it. It's the Walmarts of the world who helps drive some a lot because they got logistics. They know this. The largest logistics systems in the world next to the United States military is Walmart's supply chain logistics system. They know how to move stuff. And so why would you not learn and see how they have done that if you're another entity business trying to figure it out?
Fantastic. One of the things I also try to do when I engage with, businesses and leaders here in the US is saying, you have technology and innovation that Africa is trying to solve for. You need to become more open to seeing how your technology or your agriculture solution can actually be a part of activating economic development. Not charity. Again, this is not charity. This is about commerce. This is about export of talent. This is about export of innovation. When you think about Arkansas being the largest exporter of rice in America, it tells me that Arkansas knows something about growing rice. Africa has 60% of the remaining arable land in the world, right? So what could Arkansas and African government be doing to solve, sustainable agriculture in Africa as a win-win conversation? So those are the types of conversations I'm having. I'm also looking at the supply chain complexity. When it comes to supply chain, Northwest Arkansas, your county has solved for that. How do we connect with it? In fact, he may not know this, but let me connect the dots. He actually did some incubation activities in Little Rock. The reason I got to know was I was talking to Scott Ford about INI, and he said, I remember there was a young man from Africa. I was one of the maybe investors that were part of coaching these young people when it comes to building businesses. I don't know if INI remembers, but INI has visited Arkansas before in the tech ecosystem that is growing in Arkansas. So that's another 360 story right there of one of the leading entrepreneurs, leading innovators in Africa actually took some lessons from Little Rock, Arkansas. So for me, how do we connect that dot to make sure that the local cities, the local experts see Africa as a destination for their solutions?
Wow, that's so. Here's where we see the competition coming in, because obviously the globe is competitive. The few times that I've been over to Africa, I see China dominating and construction, and they're everywhere. Well, over the past few years, the U.S. is starting to pick up on that. Still not where we need to be, I think, in the U.S. And I think the continent of Africa has been saying we want the U.S. to be a part of this, and not just China. We want everybody to be a part of it. But we have figured out that there's players in Africa who are on cutting edge, like the Dr. Toyans and Kofi and Kwame are a couple of guys who are down in Accra, Ghana, who's got the technology and some of the broadband piece. They've been working with their government, who's now come and spend time in the U.S. trying to understand more of it so they can bring it back in this particular place, Ghana. And I think that's what we need more of. We had earlier, what's his name? OBJ, who talked a lot about that. How do we find those investors in both Africa and US who are looking to do partnerships, private-public partnerships, just private partnerships, leveraging what we do here in Arkansas, and you starting even sooner with some of the generations. Arkansas, 4 years ago, the governor, at that time, new governor, Asa Hutchinson, made coding and programming mandatory in all schools. And that meant that now we're going to start seeing generations come out 4 or 5 years later who have some coding and technology backdrop, so they always got something to fall back on, and or they can start leading the digital drive in the state of Arkansas, let alone wherever they may go, whether it be in the US or overseas. So when we start talking about generation forward looking, we start talking about how do we help change and connect that, you connect with those people who are there in Africa right now, those various countries who are saying, here's what I got, here's where I am, and here's how I'm trying to leverage that. There's players here in the US, there's counties in the US. Again, we're driven by economic development, we just are. And so to have those 3,100 counties across the nation trying to figure out how I can bring that business to the US and help drive my county and my cities, my towns, and build my people, my citizens, giving them services that they're paying for in taxes, or to help develop and send that overseas or help them overseas so they can continue to drive that. I think therein lies the simpatico and how you make that happen.
Oh, wow. Fantastic. The other thing that I also try to do is when we work with people on the continent, in terms of what we've seen is that they typically would go to, Washington, D.C. So the political elite, they're quite familiar with Washington and what's going on in that space. But one of the opportunities that we have is educating the business community on the continent and the business community and the political community in Africa about the rest of America, meaning Washington is the political headquarters, great. But if you want to learn about agriculture, come to Arkansas. If you want to learn about automotive industry, go to Michigan. If you want to learn about technology innovation, go to California. Like that level of understanding of market, of the American market, is something that we're now that's one attempt in terms of what I'm trying to do. And in fact, we have the economic advisor to the president of Ghana on the call right now listening. So those are some of the things we're trying to do to say, expand, expand, connect with individuals like you. So that's a connection that has to happen. It has to land in cities, not just in Washington, D.C. constantly. We know the power of Washington, and the next speaker is going to show us and talk to us about what's going on the political side and protecting American investments on the continent. But I think we also have to do a better job on the African side to see America beyond just Washington, D.C., because they may not know what your cities offer. And because one of the things that we do when we have this engagement in person, remember, they have to invest and fly over to come. What they always have me do is sell the city to them. Why should we come to Arkansas? Why should we come to Chicago? What's in it for us? If you're asking us to come and connect, because they are looking for business deals. They're not just traveling, if they want to do tourism, they can do that. But I think America also has to sell the rest of America, not just DC. So that's something we see as well. Yes, please.
We talked about this, you and I, a couple of days ago, and you're right. Outside of the U.S., the world sees it as DC. And so 4 years ago, when I was first elected, one of the first things I did was do a promo video that you just showed, which is talking about Washington County. And the state of Arkansas really had to do some of that same thing. Hey, we want to talk about Arkansas, why you need to come to Arkansas and do business. We have a World Trade Center. We have all these Fortune 50, Fortune 100 companies all right here in this little area that you can come and learn and do business with. Not DC, we're talking about our particular state, our particular county and towns within those areas. And that has, I think, continued to make a difference why when people start traveling, hey, do I need to go to DC only to turn around and go back to the middle of the country to go to Arkansas? Let me just go straight to Arkansas and talk to the people who are there, because we can do some things maybe that DC can't do. And yes, we have a U.S. trade office there. We have contacts there. Sister Wright is on the advisory group there, and we need to leverage all of that. But when you can bring it closest to home, i.e. the town, the Chamber of Commerce, like you mentioned in Bentonville. Bentonville's phenomenal. That's where Walmart actually sits. You got the University of Arkansas. We talk about research and research and development, which is coming next. How do we leverage all of what was going on in your education system in Africa, in the continent over there? So it's a number of those different pieces, but I think how do you promote and market? One, what are all the buckets that Africa is saying we want to touch, whether it be technology, agriculture, and all, and then say, okay, over here in the US, here are those, we talked about this a couple of days ago, we can come up with a template or the model. People want their goods and services in Walmart. Well, everybody can't just run to Walmart, talk to those buyers and all. We have to kind of help you streamline and focus, and what kind of product, what's your supply chain, what's your distribution like, what's the services. And so when we start talking about how do we promote the various cities, whether it be in Michigan, is very agriculture. I went to school undergrad in Iowa. You're not gonna find a bigger ag again than Iowa, but you're also not gonna find some of the research like Iowa. So each state offers so much, but how do we get that out there? How do we promote that? So when you're in Africa, in one of those particular countries saying, I am really focused on X, Y, and Z. Who's my go-to? Who's the experts? What's the subject matter experts? This is where I want to go and draw some of that. You're exactly right.
Absolutely. And one thing I try to say is that Africa's leaders, they are racing. They're actually racing to build partnerships. They are racing to build partnerships around the world. And they have options, like you said, in terms of China. I think the old way of engaging with the continent, that's gone, because Africa, especially under the Continental Free Trade Agreement, the continent now has pulled together. They are now the world's largest economic bloc, and they now have interest from Russia to Germany to Turkey. Everybody is knocking at the door of Africa. So I also see that there's a competition there, but I think America needs to do a better job of selling itself as an enabler. I mean, America, one of the amazing things that America already has on the continent is Africans love America and American brands and products. So you don't really have to sell the brand America. I mean, what you have to position is solutions. We have the solution to we offer solutions and enabling technology to fast track whatever it is you're trying to solve for. That kind of conversation. Like, we need to start seeing Africans as buyers of our products, buyers of our talent, buyers of our skills. And to give you an example, case in point is in 2018 when, I was pulling this together. So for example, Arkansas was the first test bed for this work that I'm doing. And I was able to connect across board. So for example, University of Arkansas, I went there and engaged with professors on the university about trade with Africa. And this is what they told me. They said, Toyin, we have the best agribusiness education in the world. Governments from all over the world send their students to University of Arkansas to learn the cutting edge technology in agribusiness. Right. We have pricing, we know everything you need to know about agriculture. But one thing we do not see people coming in from Africa to get the same level of education. How can we work with you to message that, hey, if you're trying to go next level, ag tech, ag business, you can spend a year, couple of months with us, and we will teach you everything we know, which will better position you to run. And I was like, oh my goodness, okay. So we did have professors from University of Arkansas as part of the first event. You talked about the World Trade Center, incredible. Dennis Thomas was an amazing partner. We ran the streets of Arkansas to be able to pull off the first engagement. I was like, all over the place. But again, it's testament that it takes a city like yours, it takes a state like yours to embrace novel ideas, new ideas. Because one of the things we had to fight was when you say Africa, people immediately think charity. The first thing we had to knock down was, no, I'm not from that world. Africa, commerce, Africa, investment, Africa, innovation, Africa, technology. How about we start thinking that way? But one thing that stood out with me was that Arkansas, Northwest Arkansas, embraced my idea, the idea of trade with Africa. And without that level of support, the very first engagement, I would not have been able to pull it off. It took community partnership, it took the mayor, it took your office, it took Westrock Coffee, it took Tyson Food. The city rallied round me to work, and I want to say thank you for that. In fact, the city has invited me to come back, and the city is partnering on this event.
Anytime.
Well, I remember a few weeks ago, I actually got a thank you card from Bentonville. I'm now in Chicago. I was like, why did you send me it? And that thank you card really warmed my heart. And I was like, I've got to do something again. So yes, we'll be coming back to Arkansas for sure. I'm constantly thinking of things to come back to your city. It's so amazing to have partnership, because I know you're going to open door for me, right?
Oh, no doubt. No doubt. Roll out profit. I think you're hitting on, and I guess we don't want to lose sight of that. And I'm going back to some of the first remarks by Mr. Dillon and this partnership piece. And I don't know if it necessarily has to be, and I think Abiyeje I keep messing his name up. He said, while I say, is it Obayeshe?
Oh yeah, he's not. People call him E.
E, okay, E. He said he doesn't like government, but he had to get over himself to start engaging government because there are some things that I can get and transition, change. Because we got to remember, who is government? Government is us. They come from our towns and our cities, and we promote and elect and send them there. So if we want to change some of that, we got to engage that to help get their mindset changed. When we start looking at these partnerships, though, I look at what you've been talking about in Bentonville and what we do in our county. We don't have some of the economic drivers from a tax base, but guess who does? The private sector does. So here I am. I know I have a large homeless population in our county, especially of veterans. Can I go to the taxpayers and say, hey, I need more tax dollars from you so I can do something in housing for our veterans? It was tough. And so I didn't. But what I did do is say, I got some land here in my county, and I'm going to put some particulars out, and I'm going to have folks bid on that, leasing that land to build housing. And guess what? A $6 million package came up. They were able to win that particular bid. And so in October, we'll do some groundbreaking to start building some veteran housing right near our Veterans Hospital. That's going to help the region, not just my county. And guess what? All I did was lease some land to them for really nominal anything. But over 40 years, I'll get that back if I want. But guess who's going to run it? They will. That's the type of partnerships. Guess what we'll be also able to bring in? That's just a small example. If you're talking about business in the in Ho in the Volta region, the university, I think is University of Ho, partnered with our UAMS medical because they wanted to do some partnership and sharing medical practices between the two universities. Starting with those agreements begins to start leveraging what you can start doing in your own particular country back in Africa, but then it also starts partnership with us here in Arkansas or the US. Wow, we got some partners overseas that we can continue to leverage. It started with a university sharing best practices. What other things can we do? Many of you guys may be aware of sister cities that was started by President Eisenhower several years ago, and I was the chair in Arkansas for sister cities. But it was all about getting pen pals in schools, grade schools, to write each other back when President Eisenhower was in. And because he said that in peace times, how do we just foster relations with others around the world? And because he said, as these kids grow up and they're writing letters to each other, one day they will be running governments and become senators and Congress or presidents of their countries. And it's harder to go to war with folks that you know and that you've been spending time with. Well, that relation became more than just grade schools and high schools writing pen pal letters to each other. It became businesses saying, I want to work with you and we'll have a relation. You can come into our city and and we'll welcome you and we'll warmly greet you and we'll start working on businesses partnerships. That's the type of thing that we're talking about that at least jumpstarts the conversation, jumpstarts the relation, and jumpstarts the notion between doing business in your particular countries and doing business here in the US.
Wow. I can't top that. So give us your lasting message. I know we will still be on the platform and I thank you for being there, but you have the last word. What's your key message to everybody listening?
For those who are attending, I will share this one thing, and I think having your drive, you're here on a Saturday morning, or depending on what time, it may be a different day already for you, but you're saying that I love the idea and I want to put some actual actions behind just talking about it. I want to be about it. Again, I want to see the sermon as opposed to just hear it. Where are you right where you are, and what can you influence and what can you do? How do you leverage some of these partnerships and some of the people who have attended today to say, I want to talk to those folks out in DC, or Sister Wright, you kind of got a model going that I just want to see how can I replicate some of that. Mr. Dillon, you talked about some of this digital piece, and that's a space that I'm trying to get toward and in. How do you go ahead and pick up the phone or pick up the social media and follow up on that? Because that starts, again, to continue to push the change, the mindset change, and move this whole summit forward, if you will. It's doing something. Again, we can't just be, again, Dr. E, or as the E you call him, he said that there's a mindset in the continent where, you know, I'm just okay with just doing what I've been doing. And I say, and I think our challenge is to cause them to dream bigger, just like he does, just like you do, just like Sister Wright. There's Africans in those various countries who dream big. Sam Walton, he dreamed big, but it didn't happen just like that. It takes time, it takes partnership. And so that would be my last word of encouragement, to actually do something with what you've heard over the past couple of days. Pick up the phone. I don't know if you have some of my contact information and the Arkansas World Trade. And it's not just Arkansas. If you're in Michigan or California, what have you, dig in. Who are those counties who are saying, I want to do business. I want to see the thriving economic development. I want to do some partnerships in Africa. And whoever they are, tap in and drive it. You drive it. In the absence of leadership, you lead.
Thank you so much. It's an honor. Thank you for your friendship. And we'll get talking more about this offline. Thank you, sir. Such an honor. Thank you. So we're going to quickly, I'm looking at time, we're going to quickly shift now. So the next speaker, oh my goodness, has also been a part of my journey from the very, 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 very beginning. It was one of those silent supporters that I could lean on. All I had to do was tell John, I need to connect with this person. And John would be like, here's the email, here's the introduction. John was that guy. And I have so many stories to say. I want to use this opportunity to say thank you, John. But I also want other people to connect with John, because he is known very much in the political cycle in Washington, D.C. He's a Washington lobbyist, and he also served at Pentagon. And I like to tell him, I don't even want to know what you used to do there, John. But John, it's such an honor to call you my friend and be able to share your story today. So yes, he's traveling and he actually had to drive off the road to do this. And thank you so much. I can't thank you enough, John. So you have the floor, John.
Yeah, I know you so well, but I had no idea you were a doctor. So that was a
honorary doctor, John.
Eye-opening. But yeah, it's a pleasure to be here. One thing I'm struck by, just diving in here, is technology. Yeah, I'm driving across country here instead of flying, I guess for obvious reasons. I got kind of a late start in Washington yesterday, but here I've been this morning listening to all of you on this wonderful platform you set up. Unfortunately, I did not get to hear you yesterday, but yeah, I get to pull over in a rest area here, nice and quiet. Trees, there was a cardinal in the tree here just a minute ago, and so it's so nice to be plugged in. I'd rather be with you all in Chicago in person, and especially as a lobbyist, you know, meeting people face to face is crucial. And that's one thing I'm missing in reflecting upon these times with COVID. I'm missing the embassy events. I'm missing going to think tank events. I was supposed to have been back in Africa in March. Here I am in West Virginia right now instead. But you know, I was happy to see the judge somewhat dressed up here as well. I went out of my way. I'm supposed to be this influential lobbyist. I didn't want to be wearing Bob Marley t-shirt and shorts in presentation, so I put on my Washington, D.C. suit just for you guys.
Thank you.
And I'll probably switch back since I'm in a rest area right when we're concluded here. But okay, so President-elect Joe Biden. What's the landscape going to look like? This is a parlor game we play every 4 years in Washington. It doesn't matter if we're coming into a second term of a presidency or a first term. And I don't think I'm going out on much of a limb here by saying Joe Biden's going to be the next president. Could be wrong. I'm wrong quite a lot. But again, we play this game every 4 years. So what does it mean? How is the engagement going to change internationally and with Africa? And it seems to be the same wish list every 4 years. And I've written the same articles myself. We have to do this, we should do that, we should focus more on this. We have to do more trade. And frankly, nothing much really ever happens. And I wouldn't expect that under Biden, there would be any kind of golden age US-Africa relations. I think it would just kind of go on like we are. And that's despite having high-profile Africa policy people actually under consideration now for vice president with Susan Rice. And I was surprised to see Karen Bass, although I'm understanding that she's kind of fallen off that list this past week or so. Karen Bass, wonderful person. I've engaged with her a bit, more with her staff. I've engaged with her on Capitol Hill through the years. I had the pleasure of representing Kenya, lobbying on their behalf a couple of years ago. I was technically working with Amina Mohammed, the foreign minister at that time, who is now up to be the director of the World Trade Organization, which is exciting on 2 counts. 1, because she's a friend. 2, she's a female. And 3, she's African. We've never had a female nor an African as head of the World Trade Organization. So that could be exciting. But yeah, I was in Kenya on behalf of my client at the time during their last round of elections and interacted with Karen Bass there. And I think she would make, I would like to see her in some increased capacity working on Africa, whether it's Secretary of State. My guess is Kamala Harris is going to be the vice presidential pick. And that would be my pick too. I just sense that that's the winning ticket. And that would leave Susan Rice perhaps a Secretary of State role. Again, these are all parlor games. Who knows what's going to happen? But to think we're going to have any kind of increased attention to Africa just because this change in administration, this change in personalities, probably not. Don't forget the Congress, very important. I think the Democrats might take the Senate. Again, who knows? Definitely going to hold on to the House of Representatives. In the Senate, the head of the Senate Foreign Relations Committee is a senator who never had much of a background in foreign policy, Senator Risch. The Democrats in taking control, that would be Senator Menendez taking over that important committee. And his big focus, certainly not going to be Africa, is going to be fixing a lot of the damage that's been done. State Department, American diplomacy. He talks a lot about that. So I think that would be his focus. But one consistent thing we have is very, very, very fine staff. Doesn't matter if it's Republican or Democrat, both in the House and in the Senate. And I wouldn't expect big changes there either. On the House side, Congressman, maybe I'm getting too in the weeds here politically for you, but this is what I do. Congressman Elliot Engel lost his primary race, so he will be out as kind of a shocker on the House Foreign Affairs Committee. There are 3 contenders for that right now. The top one would be Brad Sherman of California. I think he will probably end up winning that. The other contenders are Joaquin Castro of Texas and Greg Meeks, the Black Caucus member from New York. I won't dwell on this for long, but none of them really have an Africa focus. Brad Sherman's big thing is the Iran deal. He was very much against that. And just right there, that tells you right away what, American foreign policy, where the focus is. It's always going to be on North Korea. It's going to be on Iran. It's going to be Ukraine. It's going to be this or that. Castro, his big thing is the Palestinians. Greg Meeks, despite being a Black Caucus member, his focus is on NATO. I'll just, as a quick aside, just because someone's a member of the Black Caucus does not mean they're automatically by default, just like Obama, because of their heritage, that they're going to have a big interest in Africa. Well, that's not the case. In fact, traditionally, the Black Caucus doesn't have much of an interest at all. It's many, many years ago when I started out in Washington, there was a Congressman Dimely from God, was he from California? He led the Africa subcommittee. He had an interest. The late, great John Lewis, wonderful, wonderful man. I interacted with him a few times. I used to live and work in Angola during the Civil War. And when I would return home to Washington, I would on occasion brief Congressman Lewis on the situation in Angola. I mean, it always struck me, it's hard to verbalize this disconnect between Africans in America, the Black Caucus, and the relationship with the continent itself. But yeah, Congressman Lewis had listened to my updates, my briefing, but he never had a foreign policy portfolio. But anyway, yeah, so getting back to the House, I don't see any big changes there. Congressman Chris Smith, Republican from New Jersey, has always been the kind of the steady force in the House of Representatives when it comes to African affairs. And he's been very good. Okay, where am I going next? Continuity. I just scribbled some notes here on my picnic table for, I'm sorry I didn't come prepared. There's a continuity when it comes to US-Africa policy, and that's whether it's in Congress or with the presidencies. And I've written of this before, say going back to Father Bush, his policies with South Africa and apartheid, the ensuing administrations kept those policies. Bill Clinton, I was there with the early days of AGOA and the setting up. I had nothing to do with it. It's just that I knew a lot of the people that were putting that together. Excellent, excellent program. And I know you, Toyin, in many of our discussions, you're always talking about how people don't know about AGOA, whether it's in Africa or here. I mean, it's startling to me every 4 years how I'm hearing politicians and players here have no idea about AGOA and just what that has meant. But the point I'm making is every administration since has kept AGOA vital. It's still good until 2025, I believe. And then oddly enough, George W. Bush is probably the best Africa president we've had in my lifetime, our lifetimes. An abject failure in almost everything else, whether it's Iraq, Afghanistan, Hurricane Katrina, the economy, but he was a good Africa president. PEPFAR, setting up a Millennium Challenge, was not just Africa. I mean, it's a global thing, but Africa has been a large recipient of Millennium Challenge funding. It was a good model. Those institutions that he laid down are still in place. President Obama came in with Energy Africa. That remains. Trump, I see Trump as somewhat of a continuation of the Obama administration. There's not much interest there. The institutions have been reshuffled a bit for this Prosper Africa, but that's how I see it. It's just really a reshuffling of names. It's nice to have these monies there available for Africa, but again, a lot of the Africans aren't aware of this, and that's where people like me, the lobbyists, come in. So what I'll do here is quickly go over the American political scene. I've just completed that. I'll talk a bit about U.S. policy in Africa, and then I'll conclude just in talking a bit about lobbying itself. I was going to talk about security, but I don't want to go on too long. Toyin and I have these conversations all the time about just how disengaged the United States is in Africa. And I know many of you have voiced this already today, and rightfully so. We're not even in the rearview mirror of China anymore when it comes to engagement with Africa. It seemed like just yesterday to someone like me who's been active in this space for over 3 decades. It seemed like yesterday when China was kind of on par with us, just a little bit behind. And yeah, we're not even in their rearview mirror anymore. And even though their trade has kind of fallen off a bit, it's still just a speed bump. A lot of the Africans that I'm hearing from are getting a little bit tired of China. Well, let's face it, they're not going to go away. They would like some counterbalance, and that's where the United States should come in if it were to step forward in a proper way. But we're just not taking advantage of those opportunities. Turkey is the country that's really impressed me. And I don't know if maybe you've had discussions on this yesterday, or maybe I missed something this morning, but Turkey and Erdogan is just jaw-dropping, the effort they've put into Africa, unlike any other medium-sized country. Of course, a part of that is history, a part of that is geography, they're close by. But Erdogan has just had, I don't know how many trips to Africa. Just last week or 2 weeks ago, the foreign minister was in Africa again. He was in Togo, Equatorial Guinea, and was it Mali or Niger? Bringing along Turkish construction companies and aviation sector interests. And yeah, they have political agendas, of course, with these religious schools and the like. But wow, they're up to what, 42 embassies now, or maybe no more than that, because they just opened one in Equatorial Guinea. Just Turkey is really a good model. So I've been following them a lot. And there's other countries like normally don't think of, like Vietnam, Malaysia, that I've been tracking. It's very active in Africa. The French had fallen off, unfortunately. I think it has hurt them, both politically and from a business standpoint, how they have kind of fallen off the scene, but now they're trying to re-engage. Germany has never been much of a player. They're starting to pay closer attention to it. But anyway, here's all these countries now. You know, Turkey is pretty close now to the U.S. when it comes to trade. That's crazy. It's crazy. Toyin, you speak a lot about, I think if I were to jump to one of my conclusions at this point in the conversation, I'll just say it's a lot of it's PR. The Africans don't know how to really access the United States and these markets so much, and American business certainly is not thinking much in terms of Africa, unless you're the GEs of this world and the like. Lobbying, my business. Oh, I love this line of work. I really do. Lobbyists are kind of like the used car salesman of politics. I mean, that's unfortunate. Part of that's deserved, I know, but yeah, you look at, especially in this administration, the Manafort stories, General Flynn and the like, and it can get complicated. But on the other hand, I've had the pleasure of working like with the Kenyans, assisting them with issues like getting airline flights. Other countries, I don't just work with Africa, but that's my focus. Say even little Iceland, they had an issue with Iceland Air, a problem that needed resolving. I like helping. New Zealand had a visa issue. Who would think New Zealand, of all countries, had an issue with visas with the United States? And they did, and I was happy to help. So it's not all this dirty politics and under the table kind of dealings, but okay. But it is a complicated landscape, and one of the mistakes that Africans make, well, all around the world, but is going with these big firms, the biggest of the big firms in Washington. You know, by and large, they promise a lot of this and that, fancy talk, and a lot of big contracts. And this might be kind of awkward, but I'm being very frank here. When it comes to Africa, there's always an attitude with the biggest of the big firms of, yeah, we'll come in, just pay us, and then they'll pat you on the head, give you a cookie, tell you to go away, and then they'll put some junior staff on the assignment, 24-year-olds, coming up with these big long lists of things that look impressive on paper. They're going to Karen Bass's office, and then they called this assistant secretary of that and this and that. And, yeah, here's $2,000 more you owe us because, you know, we wrote this letter to Commerce Department. And then you hear it from the Africans all the time. Well, paying all this money and nothing's getting done. Well, it's just.
It's John, it's quite complex. I think that's, the landscape is complex, but the reason I think this conversation is important is because on the surface, right, you know, in the news, in the media, I think it's oversimplified. And when we look at the trade data, you see a decline in US-Africa trade. Some of the things we're sharing really unveils, it seems, you know, what's going on behind why there seem not to be enough. But one thing I can also say that is happening, I'm not sure if I'm sure you're following pretty much what the US is trying to accomplish with Kenya right now, and then with the African Continental Free Trade Agreement. I see movements, I see some conversations happening, and I also joined the call from 2 weeks ago where Rahama with the PAC DBA, where I dialed into that call. So I see conversation. I think one of the questions I have would be, what should the African private sector what should they be thinking about? What should what should African government be doing? Because one thing that is not happening, or what is happening is a lot of the African government are saying, if you want to deal with us, come to us. But is there a role that the African government, what could they be doing better? I guess, what could they be doing better to advance trade, to come to the table from a place of strength? You know, 5-10 years from now, what would you like to see differently in the political engagement? And also, how do you bring the business side of the American business side into the game?
I don't know. These are always the kind of things that you know more about. And we've had these discussions at length for a long time. And we always end up, it's not like a chicken or egg kind of thing like I saw in Iraq, Afghanistan. Can you have a legal system without security? Can you have security without a legal system? It's not quite that. But without the political foundations, without the political relations, without the security guarantees, you can't really have the trade in the way that you're always talking about. So that's really how I approach it, because I don't know. I mean, there's always these trade missions from the States here, and how can African governments, they send trade missions too, like you were just talking with Arkansas and Iowa, and I've always been kind of dubious on those. Sometimes they're successful, sometimes they make for good publicity, but I don't know. These kind of questions are more in your court. And that's why in our conversations, I always get back to the politics. I always get back to the national security, and you're talking about the trade. But you can't have one without the other, without the government relations.
Yes.
And certainly Kenya, because it's one of the anchors in the U.S. Africa policy. And you have a guest here from Ghana, and that's another one that I think should play a higher profile, and has historically been very, very close, a good model, a good entry point for the United States and Africa. We're always talking about gateways to Africa. And, we have 54 countries now, but there are certain ones like Kenya and Ghana that are just natural friends of the United States, and we have the historic links, and they should be kind of at the forefront of as models moving ahead, whether it's trade or government relations.
You know, John, for me, it feels like people are listening to the private conversations you and I have. We're giving people the privilege to see the dynamics between myself coming from the business side and saying trade, let's go. And you say, Toy, wait, what of security? What of politics? You know, so
And for all of you listening, Toyin is always so upbeat and positive. I'm kind of the opposite. I'm always downcast and cynical, but I have reason to be. We all want Africa, U.S.-Africa relations, and trade to thrive. I mean, we want to see the continent thrive. And I guess I'll close on this, just again, getting back to security. 10 years ago, we were all marveling at how all these legacy conflicts in Africa have kind of faded away. These things, Angola, I referenced earlier, where I spent a great deal of time, on and on and on and on, had kind of receded. And Africa was really looking like, wow, it turned the corner and what a bright future, because these internal and external conflicts have kind of receded. Well, here we are again. All of a sudden, we're looking at major potential for horrible conflicts. Egypt talking about moving into Libya, which frankly they don't have the military setup to do expeditionary missions like that. Egypt going to war with Ethiopia over this dam issue, and this is something that's been going on for 10 years. Why couldn't they have sorted these issues out by now? Now they're starting to fill the dam up, apparently. Mozambique, northern Mozambique, just the conflict never seems to end there. I mean, Renamo is still ongoing in the center of the country, and in the north you have external influences like from the Gulf. The DRC is in a constant state of flux, and yeah, all this optimism from 10 years ago, it's just I haven't even mentioned the Sahel, which actually is the biggest focus right now of the U.S. It sort of plays off from the Libya question, but so how can we have all this trade? How are the African leaders going to deal with trade with the United States or wherever, or putting together this free trade, this continental free trade zone with these massive conflicts ready to break out? Again, chicken or egg, somewhat.
Fantastic. There's a question for you. I thought I was the only one enjoying this, but it looks like you have a question. Davishak Johnson asks, how do politicals, that's quote, get hired by African government for lobbying on behalf of Africa?
What do you mean, someone like me?
Right. I think she's asking, I really don't have much background. So how do African governments hire somebody like you? That's the way I'm reading this question.
It takes a lot of work on my part. Again, frankly, you have to be on the ground in Africa. Again, that's why this COVID thing is hurting. Although lobbying itself, I'll tell you this, is exploding right now. Domestic lobbying and foreign, it's just exploding. But you can't close deals with Africans without being in, pick a capital, any capital. You can't do it. Same with the Middle East. There are other regions of the globe like Asia, where you can kind of do a video thing like this or some calls and you can conclude business. Europe, East Europe, you kind of have to have drinks with people to close deals in person. But yeah, it's hard work on my behalf, reaching out and looking for business.
I think something I can also add that you do really well, that I don't think people understand, that you have to be very good with relationships. You have to be generous, because it might be a relationship you've built a year, 2 years before it actually generates any business revenue. And, while people are listening, I also want to say thank you, even for me personally, the way you've supported me. I remember a few years ago when, Donnie Smith, we were preparing for the first edition of Trade with Africa Business Summit. And I was talking to him as an investor, and I said, I want you to be my keynote speaker. What would you like to see as an investor, as a CEO? And he said, Toyin, we need an economist, right? We need an economist to tell us as CEO, why Africa, where is Africa going economically? And I said, okay, you want me to get an economist? Where would I get that from? One thing that then happened was I reached out to you and I said, John, John, World Bank economists, like, where would I get that? You know, we need them at our event. And one beautiful thing that John did was, and I know I'm going public here, is you told me, you said, Tony, I'm currently in a meeting right now where the chief economist for Africa at the World Bank is speaking. Let me see if I can get him for you. Few minutes later, you took a screenshot of his business card and say, here you go, Tony. Here's his contact. I told him he'll be expecting you. And I was like, what? John, you are amazing. So to that question, Dafisha, what I'll tell you that John does absolutely well is he knows how to network. He knows how to build partnerships, and he does it in a very extremely generous way. So that's something I want to encourage people to do. Whatever business you're in, really, whether or whatever, if you're looking to, business is done at the speed of relationship, right? The ability to, and I don't know if John, if you want to speak a little bit to that, but I have seen you practice it with me. I've seen you practice it, and that's a winning sauce in terms of treating people with generosity, showing up, and being present, showing up to those events as well.
You know, when I opened, I said how much I love this line of work, and I do. It's awesome. And not all the countries that I'm paying attention to. I was actually going to go through what I'm paying attention to now, but I have to hit the road here again. But take Mauritius, for example. That was mentioned earlier. That's a place I've been eyeing quite a lot, but there's really no business there from a lobbying standpoint. But I've made good friends there, and that's part of what I enjoy, is just these connections. I was sitting down with my friends from the Embassy of Georgia Republic, a while back, and I said to them, you know, Georgia hires a lot of lobbyists too. I said, you know, odds are we're never going to actually do business together, but I just love this becoming friends with you people and drinking your fine Georgian wine and having conversation. And so, yeah, the networking is really crucial. And I'll close on this. Yeah, I was complaining about the big lobbying firms earlier, and I think it's helpful to have someone who actually knows the continent of Africa and has spent a great deal of time there. And the people I have with me, in connection with me, are old established Africa hands that make me look like I'm new, highly talented across a broad swath, cross-section of capabilities. And I'm just kind of the advisor and the one who puts the connections together, like you were just talking about. So anyway, great to be here from West Virginia. I think I'm going to be in Ohio in a few minutes.
John, I want to say thank you. I want to publicly say thank you, because when this was just an idea, you were one of those, you know, small group of believers that pretty much blew strong winds in my sail and say, yay, go for it. We're here. We'll support you, even if it's quietly. But I'm glad.
You lack energy and enthusiasm. That's the one downside here. You're too low key.
I'm too low key, right? You know, I remember one day you said, Toyin, wow, I didn't know you had this much ambition. I knew you were going to do something, but you were like, man, you're an ambitious woman. I was like, okay. Thank you, John. It's such an honor to call you my friend. And thank you for sharing.
Likewise. I'm going to change into my Bob Marley t-shirt now. So.
Thank you for putting on your nice suit for us. We really appreciate it. Have a safe trip, John. Thank you.
Thank you. I'll be listening.
Okay, fantastic. Wow. You know, this is such a unique conversation. It's not typical that we get into the mind of
Am I off?
Bye. In terms,
how do I shut it off?
Okay, you're good. It's still showing you, right? That's okay. You can exit, or I can just keep talking. Okay, good. So basically, it's not enough. That's one of the things John usually kind of guides me on, is that it's not enough for you to be saying you want trade to increase, trade with Africa to increase, that there are some foundational engines and pipes, you know, in the political space that has to happen. And I say, well, that's not my world. You go figure that out. So that's why bringing that conversation into the dynamic of this forum today. I felt it was kind of important for so many people. It might be a new, different type of engagement, but just keep your mind open in terms of what's happening. But for us, the platform is also primarily to drive trade with Africa. So one of the things we're going to quickly do, we've been here for 2 days now. I want to also thank those that have joined us from far and near, right? We were running on multiple time zones, but I really want to, as we're starting to close things down, I want to ground the conversation we're having with the next speaker. You know, Masabata is stationed in South Africa. She's one of the people I like to call the future of Africa. One thing I also say privately is that many of us, our generation, may not have had the level of mentorship that we would have desired from the generations that went ahead of us. But I'm hoping that we do not repeat that for the generation coming behind us. I'm hoping that through the next story you're about to hear, that it challenges us, the speakers, the listeners. It challenges us to think closely about the youth of Africa, and it challenges us to see how we can use our own resources, knowledge to blow, again, wind in their sail and get them doing what they believe in. So that's going to be the next speaker. So Masabata, I want to welcome you to share your story in terms of, just tell us your story. Feel free, don't feel like you need to make it, super formal. I just want people to hear your story and the things you're trying to accomplish as a young lady in South Africa. Go ahead. Hi, Masabata.
Hey, hi.
Oh,
How are
great.
you? Sorry about that.
No, you're fine. You're fine. This is the power of technology.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much.
Before you go on, what's the time now in South Africa?
It's 7:15.
Wow, thank you. Thank you for staying. Go on. Can you hear me? Go on, Masabata.
Yeah.
Okay, there's a slight delay. Okay.
Tonya, I can't hear you clearly. I don't know if it's my network or yours.
I can hear you clearly, and I think there's a lapse. We may have lost Masabata. Okay, can you hear me now?
Yes.